It is June 3rd, 2024, and I'm out here in Norfolk, Virginia, to see the wonderfully talented and radiant Remica Bingham-Risher. And I feel very fortunate to have found Remica's work a few months ago, a great happy accident. I had signed up for a virtual author panel through an organization called Pen Parentis, and you should really check out the great work they're doing. But I originally signed up because one of my other favorite Virginia authors, Jocelyn Nicole Johnson, was on that panel. And this is one of those situations that by just following one interest or curiosity, you get more than you bargained for in the best way possible. And when I heard Remica on that panel start talking about Room Swept Home and reading those poems, I was completely captivated. And it was so moving to hear the backstory with her family in Virginia and how she was weaving that history together through these poems. And Remica had such a spirit about her that you're really drawn to. And when that panel was over, I immediately ordered Room Swept Home and then all of her other books, and I just read them over the next month or so. And when I got done, I still wanted more. I was like, I really want to be friends with Remica. And I thought, hey, what better way to make friends than to talk about books? So I wanted to share Remica's spirit and her work with other people, and I invited her to Books on the Bed, which she so graciously agreed to. And a few weeks ago, we talked on the phone for the first time, which got me even more excited because I was like, oh, we're going to be great friends. And we planned this trip here to Virginia so that we can break bread and talk about these books on the bed. So it's such a joy to be here. It's a beautiful day, and I can't wait to see the books that Remica chooses to share and have a wonderful conversation with her. And I really hope you enjoy this as much as I'm about to. You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We're trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. I'm saying yes to things that I really want to do almost no matter what, because it's going to bring something, or it could lead to connection.
But also, it just brings you joy.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just fun.
Like, isn't that revolutionary that you get to have joy in the things that sustain you materially as well? It's a whole nother, Yeah,
it's good. But no, this is great. Like I said, Room Swept Home is one of the best books I've read in the 2020s.
Thank you. Ooh, I appreciate you.
When you told me the backstory with your great-great-great-grandmother and your grandmother and the confluence, there you door welty word that keeps coming up, right? But that confluence, unknown confluence.
Yeah.
And then just the way that you're like James McBride with the history. I mean, that was deep research. And I think that's what made this book stick out among many, many good books I've read, because the care that went into that was evident. And I mean, I was just like, why did I not know about this? I'm so glad I found it. This is a book that I think should be taught to students.
I'm grateful too. I hope so.
As not only writers, as historians, because it combines the best of what I love,
Right.
And I was like, man, this would have been really cool to read in school and discuss because they're so
I was an African-American studies, African-American history minor, right? So English, African-American history. So I'm like, how'd you get to history? Yeah. If somebody would have put something like this in my hands, well, my head probably would have exploded. But I mean, really, you know what I mean? These are the kinds of things. These are the kind of, especially even now, like these kind of like hybrid texts are changing everything that I understand about what's possible in literature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This felt very, we were talking about why James feels singular, but this really just felt like an expression of you.
Ooh.
There was nothing else there. Like, this was so personal.
I'm glad.
So personal. Yeah, and like the trip to the museum.
It really is. It's,
the archival work, which it's just so powerful. I think I'd like, though, to start by you describing for people that haven't heard about this book, that confluence between your great-great-great-grandmother and your grandmother, and why that induced you to undertake this really massive effort.
I mean, that really is kindness upon kindness. So I thank you for that. But my understanding of these two women started out as just a little kernel. My paternal grandmother, who still live in Hey Shirley, my nana, called me out of the blue. You know, I was already a writer. I was already kind of in the thick of things, but said, have you ever read this interview with my grandmother, my great grandmother? And I said, Nana, what? Of course I haven't. Like, I would have been super excited. Yeah. So they know. They throw me all the family history stuff now.
Yeah.
And so she said, have Aunt Rousey put it in the mail. So my aunt mails me, and when I open it, I realize immediately, because I'm an African-American history, African-American studies minor, I'm looking at a WPA slave narrative. But they had no idea what it was. But all the headings are the same. So, I'm immediately like hyperventilating. And by paragraph 2, I realized I've read this, and not just once, several times. Because Minnie Fawkes, my great-great-great-grandmother, has one of the most anthologized WPA slave narratives out of the hundreds, maybe even thousands of those that were created, because I found this in the research. You know, she's interviewed by a friend. She's interviewed by a Black woman teacher in her area. And most people aren't. So they're, interviews, of course, white man comes to your house and says, tell me how slavery was. And you say, it was the best. It's wonderful. I'm glad that I made it out, and things were good for me, boss. Right? Right. As you can imagine.
Oh, yeah. It's totally
there's
different.
just, there's not much that's there. There's still plenty in those narratives. But as you can imagine, they're skewed narratives, right? But hers reads very differently. It's a very long narrative. And so she was interviewed in Petersburg in her house that my grandmother was born into. She was born in Minnie's bed when she was 5. Minnie was a midwife and helped birth her, one of her last great-grandchildren that's born in her bed. And then I realized from my mother's side of the family, my maternal grandmother was also in Petersburg, Virginia. Also in the year that Minnie was still there, in 1941, and they were within 1 mile of each other, of course, without knowing it, because she was sent to the Central Asylum for the Negro Insane, right? And so that is now Central State Hospital, which still exists. But the fact that those two women in my family line would cross paths unknowingly and then would usher all of us in, it was too much for me to bear. So I had to write through their stories and those, extraordinary instances that happened in both of their lives.
I mean, it still gives me chills. It gives me chills.
I know.
Because the recognition of that, how powerful.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the way you frame it, of not word for word, right? But this idea of like bringing out their lives through these poems. Because can you describe how you do the sections so that people can understand how cool this is going to be, this journey?
Well, I appreciate that. I knew that I wanted to write through their lives and in their voices. Persona poems were poems that I always loved. So stepping into, the voice of another. And I thought, Minnie has this narrative, but she's never gotten to really tell her own story, and certainly not her life story. That narrative is about when she was enslaved. She was 5 or 6 years old, once the Civil War happens and emancipation comes. And so, I thought it would be really interesting for people to get to know what Minnie did beyond those years. Right? She became an entrepreneur, and she, had plots of land, and they bought land and sold to teachers like Susie Bird.
Yeah.
And they, sold at the market, and, really sustained herself and had 11 children and, a fulfilling and loving marriage, all these things. Right? And so I wanted her to be able to speak. So Minnie has the first section of the book. And then Mary Knight, my maternal grandmother, my mother's mother, who I knew deeply and was holding her hand when she passed. So, was that incident at the asylum was the very beginning of her life. She was 18 when she was sent there after having her first child. And so, again, the very tip top of, the tiniest portion of her living. And then she went on to, sustain herself in every way to raise, a family, to usher us all into like faith and into, children and grandchildren and all these things. And so I wanted her to be able to tell her story too. So the second section is in her voice. And I honestly thought the book would end there. But it just wasn't possible because I realized that I was writing about Minnie and Mary, but the reasons that their stories were just fascinating to me, other than just being women of my line, was because they told the story of the country that we're in now, like right up to this moment and how we got here. And so the next section kind of deals with that, like how we got here, what survived, what's coming, right? And then there's a crown of sonnets that really combines all of us. So it's the Lose Your Mother Suite, where I finally get to talk about, how these women kind of carry me.
Yeah, so what's really cool about this, you being on Books on the Bed, is just, you talk about how much the women raised you.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And then you also talk in Soul Culture about being the people that grew you up.
Yes.
So it's all of this.
That's right.
In your own work.
Yeah.
In the work of other poets and writers. And I think that's what really got me excited, is it almost felt like this conversation was meant to be, because we get to talk about all the people who grew you up.
That's right.
And this book, just like I said, it felt so deeply personal. Not that other poetry doesn't.
Yeah.
But not every poetry has these archival things that you're showing. And what's really interesting, you mentioned about your grandmother being in the asylum. Mm-hmm. First of all, the ways in which that gets stigmatized, especially after having a child, and how that affects you.
Of course.
And then coming back into the world. I think one of the poems you talk about, she was gone for a certain amount of time, but it felt like only...
She was gone for 2 months and 13 days, but she always said it was long enough to have another baby. She always held that she was there for 9 months.
Yeah, but what you can't learn from a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So there's always something underneath this. It's kind of like in a photograph.
Yes. It's the punctum, like Natasha
Autumn Womack.
Trethewey.
Have you ever heard of Autumn?
No.
She talks about the afterlives of Black Death. And there was this traveling family, I guess you could call it an exhibition, a traveling exhibition of this family who had lost their husband and father to a lynching. And I might mistake it that it was in Philadelphia. It was at some place in the 1800s, and I really wish I could remember. I'll send you a link.
Yes.
But then she wrote this really good piece that talks about like why they traveled, to show that the Black Death is not the only thing that happened in this picture. Yes. So that afterlife, that really stuck with me, that you're now looking at the afterlife.
Yes.
You're looking at these people carry him with them.
That's right.
And it ended up not going on for that long, but she just wrote about this idea that like we focus on the event, not all the ways in which, the things we're not seeing, the stories that are not told about that event before the person died and then after.
Yeah, after.
So it just felt like there was a connection here. Would you mind reading
of course
a couple poems from here? You can choose.
You just pulled out my book and you have tab dividers.
I have.
It's my dream to see somebody pull out my book and they've got it tabbed.
I had to, because I was like,
anything you want me to read, Matt, it's all for you.
Well, there. Speaking of that last section being really cool, that you thought it was going to stop.
Yeah.
But Minnie and Mary lived to 84. That one really, really got me.
Thank you so much. There was also, what I didn't, the last little piece, the last section is called What Survived. Mm-hmm. And that actually comes after the Lose Your Mother Suite. And there's so much joy in that section.
Yeah.
And there's joy throughout, because it was something that I had to focus on. I knew the book was going to have to carry a lot of heaviness. So I knew joy and lightness had to be infused. But this in particular, it's a contrapuntal, so you can read it in the voice of Minnie on one side, Mary on the other, and then they create another another voice across. So that's how I read it, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Minnie and Mary lived to 84, and that's true. Minnie, born slave, my heart gave out, failed and betrayed me. Too big, maybe. Delivered what little love kept me alive. Dark and wondrous, my hands are skillful. A slave again, even in my people's eyes, when they ask all those questions. I run to the fishing hole, sing in the light. I believe the past is one teacher, not the whole spirit. Mary, born free, my kidneys won't filter out what they need. The world had the soft carapace of the body, steady as steel, until I became a bent flower, heavy stone. But son, a new day comes over and over. Worry won't have me. I work the garden, pray in the dark. The body withers, not the whole mind. Minnie and Mary. Born a slave, born free, my heart gave out. My kidneys failed and betrayed me, won't filter out. Too big, maybe. Delivered what they need. What little love the world had kept me alive. The soft carapace of the body, dark and wondrous, steady as steel. My hands are skillful until I become a slave again. A bent flower, heavy stone, even in my people's eyes. But son, a new day comes when they ask over and over all those questions. Worry won't have me. I run to the fishing hole. I work the garden, sing in the light, pray in the dark. I believe the past is one teacher. The body withers, not the whole spirit, not the whole mind.
It's so good. I could listen to you read all day.
Oh, thank
We
you.
could just make a whole episode of
I
that.
appreciate you, but you know who my teachers are, Tim Steebles and Patricia Smith. I better come correct every time I step to
Yeah,
a
you got a lot to live up to there. Oh man.
But also the voices of these women, right?
Yeah.
Like how dare I, not care every time I decide to invoke their voices.
That's a good point. Yeah, you can't be on cruise control.
Oh no.
Not with that.
How dare I?
Yeah.
It's impossible. And that, that's what happens when you write something that's like uber personal, like you were pointing out. Yeah, it changes even the way you approach the work, which I don't know if I expected after finally getting it into the world in the way that I wanted. Yeah.
How do you think that changed you from your first couple of books, which were good?
Thank you.
Really good. And it just felt like it was almost like, leading.
Yes,
to something
absolutely.
like this.
Everything was leading up to this. I know that for sure. I can pinpoint kind of the points of light where, things connect on the dots like a map. And my books were personal. I'm always writing about family.
Yeah.
My book of poems before this, Starlight and Air, was love poems. So it's deeply personal. About my husband. And, so those things were there. But I think, one, this book took so long. Not only the write, routinely takes me like 7 years to write a book of poems. So they all take a long time. But the research took so long. We had to wait 75 years to get my grandmother's medical records. So, literally like waiting at the at the Library of Virginia until I could touch the ledger where she was signed into the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. So those kinds of things, the deep consideration and carefulness and time and energy were kind of the things that pointed me in the direction that this would be a larger undertaking, and it takes even different breath like to go back into it time and again. But I knew this would, I tell my husband all the time, if I get this book into the world and something happens to me tomorrow, I've done my job.
That's a powerful feeling to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! And using the word careful.
Yeah. Like Lucio Clifton.
That's authentic / full.
That's right. Come on.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what it feels like, and I think that's what all the best things are.
That's right.
Full of care.
Yeah.
Full.
Yeah.
Right. Some things do feel empty. Sometimes even if they're good.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
It's like you can use good language, but to have it that depth, that can be a challenge for people.
Yeah.
The idea of being clever versus true. That comes up a lot.
And and the poets know the hardest part is doing both, right? Like, it's still got to be beautiful. It can't be beautiful and not, it's not an option for us. Right? So that's what makes it difficult. But also the care is what makes it good.
Yeah. There was another one that I had, but you can choose another one.
Now, anything you want.
It was the I'm trying to carve out a world where people are not the sum total of their
I love that poem, and
disaster.
I don't get to read it a lot. So
this one really, really stuck with me.
That's a real gift. That.
And it's right before the last one.
I was about to say, it's right before the ending poem, Room Swept Home. It's also because, we were just talking about Southern writers who mean a lot to us and, kind of the way we cultivate community. So during COVID, I'm working on this. I'm working on soul culture. I'm doing all kinds of things. But podcasts and craft became really important to me. And I was listening to either a podcast or it was, all those events were happening online. Everything was going on online so you could sit in. And it was Kiese Layman and Sarah M. Broom. We're talking about the Yellow House, Woo! Which is one of my favorite memoirs to, have come out in the last decade or so. Not to mention Heavy, not to mention, what Kiese is doing. But that is it's a quote from one of them. I'm trying to carve out a world where people are not the sum total of their disaster. And I said, that's the same thing that I'm trying to do, because the scary part is that you could leave them, in their trauma and not ever talk about the context outside of the death of things. Right. Yeah. And so that's what this poem is. And it was important for me to make sure that this happened in the end of the book. I'm trying to carve out a world where people are not the sum total of their disaster. But for the grace of God, one might begin. And this must be the life of a woman. I will barely touch the surface of all it took to keep them here. They taught us to nod to others in the street, to holler love, to knead eggs and butter and flour into yeast rolls larger than fists, to coax and heed the land. Looking at us, every god must be astonished and envious. What could leave us finished? Grandmother's grandmother, enslaved by someone's daughter, enslaved and someone's daughter, held her mother out to us with eager, capable hands. What couldn't she grow? What couldn't she stand? And the man beside her, kissing her neck at night before being thrown into war in the nation and abroad, barreled back to her creases, her starch and hand-me-down pots, her thick hair and threadbare dresses, loved every falling apart piece of her, down to the rocked over heels on her shoes. Every lie told says there was no love between them, but everywhere I turned, here it was. Slow drags, belly laughs, few reckon with their joy. Most will make happiness a footnote, along with evenings on the porch, hitting the number straight or box, mother wit, inner light. Oh, glory and genius of unfathomable invention. To raise over full children with a guiding soft hand. Strange how everything can become a symbol, a cushaw gourd, songs sung to trees, hair luster, dreams. Any charm one carries can be a hopeful, treasured thing. They helped us find bottles with corners of homespun shine and place our lips above the hollow until they sang. They were not angels. They were not myth. They saved pennies and baby hair and wedding rings, grew big as a piano box, broke through fever. Their suffering wasn't everything.
Whew. That might be my favorite poem in the book.
Thank you. It's just so important to say they loved us deep and got us here. I
mean, that the question when you ask these questions, that really to me, rose the poem to like another level of feeling.
Oh,
What couldn't
you.
she grow?
Yeah.
Right? What couldn't she stand?
Yeah.
And then bringing in the few reckon with their joy.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one. Oh, was it with Evan Jordan? Who were you talking
maybe.
about that helped you during COVID reckon with the fact that like love poems can be written at any time?
Yep, it was
Because
Evan Jordan. Yeah, he was such
So
a
it's
good
such
reader.
a struggle
Yes.
to
Yeah.
say like, should I write?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there are some writers that just did not write
That's right.
during
And
that time. But like, don't we always need a love?
we do.
a
And
love
that,
poem?
it was in that essay with Evan Jordan because Evan Jordan is a brilliant, writer of love poems. But in particular, another brilliant poet that I got to shout out, L. Lamar Wilson, called me and said, "Oh my God, you're writing love poems. Like, I'm so grateful we get to do that." And I was like, "Oh, right. We still get to do that despite how frightened we are in this moment, right?"
Yeah.
In these moments. We're in the middle of this kind of double pandemics. My friend Romaine had just been killed by police, and there was, the Charleston church shootings. And I mean, things are just mounting in every way. We are scared every day, all of us. We can't leave our houses. I mean, this time was just, it was exhausting for us. And it was so great to hear somebody say, of course there are love poems. We have to have these in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope people don't forget that.
I hope not either.
I think this is what humanity just tends to do.
Yeah.
Bend to the feeling of the time,
Yeah.
which is overwhelming. And
Exactly.
so there's nothing wrong with love.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with saying, we carried each other here. We'll carry each other again.
Yeah. Yeah. So that poem just called forth so much of your, I feel like, I don't want to call it philosophy, but just what guides you.
I think so.
To write.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And like to live. It really, that's definitely beyond the writing for me. Love is a singular godly thing that guides me to live a certain way. Mm-hmm.
There was one more, if you don't mind.
I love this, please.
I put a sticky note on too many.
Okay.
But
oh, which one? Oh, one of the sonnets?
yeah.
Yes.
This one, those with visions.
Okay.
Hit me.
Which I don't know if I've read this poem.
Again, there was just something about start to finish the way this felt so complete and whole. Yes. Anyway, page 10.
Page 10.
Those with
the very early on.
Yeah.
Yes, I know for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to read that section of this poem because this is on the plantation, or as some say, down home, because down home is italicized because that's some of the language that shows up in Minnie's slave narrative.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm kind of rewriting some of the experiences that she mentions or just mentions in part. And so these are all kind of little vignettes of what life was like on the plantation. And I absolutely haven't been able to read section 4 yet. So let's read that. So this is in Minnie's voice. Those with visions, what young folks call dreams, knew the Bible, preached it different, said not what white folks repeated. Slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling and sincerity of heart, but assured us you were called for freedom. God spoke to some in the night, and they told us hope would follow. In those back days, child, we were never sure what the book said. Couldn't read it. Just trusted in dreams until we were able, with God's help, to pull ourselves together. Never lost sight of each other. Looked for chosen or blood kin, a path to a great big city with no dividing line. Dreamed everyone reborn, running perfectly wild. Yeah.
Gosh.
And those two quotes, those are quotes from the scriptures, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, like you could bend it one way or bend it another. And for sure, we know that was happening,
Yeah.
In as many ways. Hopefulness was being, lobbed at others under cover of dark in the same way that fear was. So.
And I love this idea of visions as, if you can't read the book.
Right. Somebody gonna tell you something. Right?
Yeah. And I think this is, just in dreams until we were able, with God's help, to pull ourselves together, never lost sight of each other. It's just, that one was so good.
Yeah.
Trust me, like this is, I love this book so much. I will do my best to sell it as many times as we can.
I appreciate you. Wesleyan Press appreciates you. They really.
And they got some good books.
They've been a dream. They're a dream just to be in the company of the poets who are there. Wesleyan, as many people, it's their dream press, and I'm certainly one of those people. But just again, back to that word care, the care they took with this book, everything we asked for, everything I envisioned talking about, like really, like down to the gorgeous cover by
Lisa
Cave.
It's an amazing cover. Oh my gosh.
Brilliant artists that they supported at every turn. Like we didn't enter into that decision lightly. But everything, the images that are there, a book of poems with a bibliography in the back. They supported everything that we needed to do to make sure the story was told well.
Yeah. And I think, you have to include the pictures. Like you have to include the context.
Absolutely.
From what you're writing, and just some of those old photos. Like, oh my gosh.
we needed it all. It's a story that hasn't been told yet. So
shouts out Wesleyan Press. That's I still got a lot to read from their poetry collection, no doubt.
They're wonderful. So please keep grabbing books.
Well, I usually do this at the beginning, but I think we just started talking about Room Swept Home, and it gives will help you and people understand why I got you the gifts that I got you.
You got me gifts? Matt, you came all the way to my city and then got me gifts?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the best
Look
ever.
what you give us.
Oh, thank you.
You're a teacher.
So excited right now, Matt. Inordinately excited.
So
you should see how pretty these books are. I hope they're books. When
I was telling you about, history more than literature first, bringing me, this is why that Eudora Welty quote of parting a curtain.
Yes.
That's what history did for me, is I was like, it's a lot deeper and contains way more stories than you could imagine. And this book was the one that broke everything open for me.
What?
There is a chance you have both of these.
That's okay.
But I just want
to know what
so
books
much
broke you open.
And this was in a class.
Am I allowed to open it?
Yeah.
This was in a class.
1865 to the present. It was a U.S. survey course. So I thought, you're going to learn a little bit about Reconstruction.
Right, you're like, I know all of this. You were so cocky.
Railroad, right? But you think you're going to stay at that surface. And what my professor did, shouts out, like, at first I was kind of upset. I was like, so it was this book, and then Mexican Chicago, Femininity and Flight, Coming Out Under Fire. With, so it was all minority stories.
Maybe, I was about to say, who knows what we're about to pull out here, because that sounds like a crazy syllabi. Okay.
This was the first one with Reconstruction. I'm so excited. And
this is beautiful. Did you wrap these? Matt, this is really gorgeous.
I'm a bookseller. I got to know how to wrap.
You really do. I can't believe we've taken no pictures. We have to take pictures. We will. Stuff.
We'll take pictures.
Oh my gosh. Do I know this book? Do I? Yes, I know this book and love it, and push it into people's hands.
Okay.
And that is why there is not a copy on my shelf right now, because at the end of every semester, I let my grad students come in and pick 10 books at a time. And the only caveat is, if it's signed, let's talk about it. Because I don't want to, if their heart is set on it, I don't want to steal it. If it's somebody I know, I can get it signed again. But this book, sorry guys. So, Tara Hunter, To Joy My Freedom. Come on.
I figured
Southern
you would
Black
have
Women's Lives and Labors After the Civil War, which was a book that was really important to me very early on. It came to me in college the same way it came to you, in an African American Studies course, and I had no idea. I thought I knew so much just about working class women. It's also a book that I went back to just very briefly recently after reading Black Folk. Have you had a chance to see this book yet? So this book that is about Black working class, like tracing the working class, Black living. Who is this brilliant writer? Well, I'm going to Google it right now. But this book comes up. And so I went back to it. What? I'm so excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't have it on my shelf right now.
Well, now you can restock it and maybe give it away again sometime.
Maybe sometime, but I think I'll hold it.
But yeah, Tara Hunter, I mean, I was just like, I was from a fairly homogenous place in Southwest Ohio.
Yeah.
And the first history class I'd taken was war in the 20th century in the U.S. So it talked, only about those conflicts.
Yeah.
Which in a really good way was also a great class. But, oh my gosh, why did I blank? I gave that to James McBride.
Oh my God.
That was his gift.
The Roots of the Black Working Class, Black folks, Blair L.M. Kelly.
At UNC
remember.
Chapel Hill.
What? Come on. It comes up, as you can imagine, when you're doing like cross-referencing and researching.
But yeah, and I just, between Room Swept Home and that, like the idea that something starts just from a historical bit of energy, you see a historical marker or you read a certain story and you're like, wait, why has no one explored this more deeply? Part of me knew you had that or had to have had it before.
Makes me so happy.
Nonetheless.
This is like really... I joke all the time with my husband, like, people can't really buy writers' books because guess what? We've read them all and we know. Like, Matt, you deeply know me and my work. Like, even my husband wouldn't have picked a book this good for me. And he's cute. Okay?
Well, I'm glad
that was good. Come on.
Dude, yeah, I'm telling you, I will never forget the first time I sat down in East Quadrangle at the University of Michigan.
Wow.
And it's hard for me to pay attention, like to really sit down and read. But once I do, if you get a book this good. Yeah. But yeah, even the backstory of like that question she got from the white missionary.
Right.
Why would you leave the comfort of your plantation, the certainty, and the swift response to joy my freedom? Why else?
Freedom. What else is there? That's right.
Oh my gosh.
That, of course, that's what we're writing toward when we're doing that kind of contextual
But people need
work.
to read this book. And I know that folks steer away from history that they think might be dense.
But it's a really well-written book of history, too. From what I remember, there's very few textbooks that you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go. But really, this was handed to me as a textbook, but doesn't read like
No, it does not. And speaking of connections, Autumn Womack is in the same department.
What?
At Princeton.
Now I'm...
She's much younger. I don't know where she was before. But that whole department, are you kidding me?
I don't know this work. I can't wait.
Yeah,
well, you've just given me good things that I now have to find. Okay, I found Autumn. Look at that. Very rude. The first thing that comes up is Autumn Womack in conversation with Sadia Hartman. Lose your mother. Come on. Okay. All the connections.
See what I'm saying?
That's
how it goes. That's how it goes.
Yes.
So the second one
there's another.
is much more personal because it takes place not an hour or maybe a little more than an hour from Scotland Neck, North Carolina.
What? Hold on.
And I was in a bookstore in Cincinnati, Ohio, on a visit just to meet up with my friends from Michigan. And we walked in this bookstore, and I'm blanking on the name. I will get it and put it in the notes for the episode. Yeah. But it was a black bookstore.
Yeah.
And it was really like one of those places that you're searching, and there's so much good stuff, but then just something catches your eye. And as a history student, this one, but I didn't know I was ever going to meet you, and I didn't know how close this would be to your family's
I was about to say,
origins.
Even people don't even say the town of Scotland Neck, North Carolina. You know what I mean? So even when I hear that it's only an hour away from Scotland Neck, it's like, what? How is it possible? Is it my folks? Yeah.
It's like an hour northwest, I think. I'm blanking on the map now. But point being, this connects so much to Joy My Freedom, to Room Swept Home, to your family.
It's heavy.
And it was inspired by someone else that's really important. So
look, now I'm like opening it like it's like a precious gift. I'm scared to tear the wrapping. I do not recognize this book. Somerset Homecoming, Recovering a Lost Heritage, Dorothy Sproul Redford. Oh, with Michael D'Orso? Wait a minute. Okay. I'm like, do I know this book?
Read the first page and you'll understand.
Oh.
Look.
So you guys, you open it and there's the huge family tree that my daddy has framed for me. But it opens to this brilliant, gorgeous family tree. Oh my God. Listen, you just don't even know how much I love. Like, it's a used library book at one point.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite thing in the world. So, oh my gosh. I want to get to the like actual first page of writing because Alex Haley does the foreword.
It was after she decided to do this after Roots.
So this is like a real family history that she is tracing.
Yep.
This is amazing.
And it was a huge get-together.
This is amazing.
She brought it all back. She made the connections. And she was a single mother who didn't know much about her own family's story. And after watching Roots, she's like, no, I need to do this. I need to figure out where I come from.
Oh, God, I don't know that they're gorgeous family images. I mean, this is the precursor to Room Swept Home. A precursor that I don't even know exists after all this years of research. You know what I mean?
I was like, if you don't have it, this book is made for you.
I do not have it. I've never read it. I'm already engrossed.
I think Dorothy died last year. But yeah, I mean, I kid you not. I was just roaming around and I was like, wait, something about this book feels really important. I couldn't pinpoint it. It's just the feeling you get. And so it tells this whole, yeah.
What is happening? Take a picture of like the matriarchs and the family,
right?
Older matriarchs laughing, smiling, holding each other. This is just what we were talking about.
And it's so close to where your family's from in North Carolina.
They're on the plantation where 4 generations ago her ancestors worked in bondage. We are found, explains Gadsden. Stop this.
You'll love it.
I mean, really, these are, without a doubt, the best book gifts I have ever been given. And it is hard to buy writers' books. These are the best book gifts. Like, you are hardcore, Matt. Because nobody can pick books for me. That's darn impressive.
Well, I'm glad you didn't have one of the
I know. I mean, I haven't even seen it.
That's good.
Imagine. Now I'm going to have to, be texting you furiously as I'm reading.
Do. I mean, I don't know. Actually, a student at Mississippi State who randomly came into City Lights a few months ago. He'd been following me on a story made on Instagram, and then he came into the store, and he messaged me when I posted about this book, and he told me about an archaeological site in Mississippi that's going to be open to the public that is about it's the connection between African slaves in Mississippi and their legacy in Liberia. I'll have to get you information about that. Yeah. But yeah, he was like maybe the only other person I've ever heard that's read this.
I have never. Now, I'm looking at a few pictures in the back, and I think maybe I've heard a really tiny blip, probably on a podcast or in a documentary.
I'm assuming about it was Somerset, a big story.
Right? Yeah, like as a news story, but I had no idea that this text had been written.
The why, she felt the need, not only for her, but her daughter.
Right.
And, then Alex Haley's, it's pretty wild. He wasn't going to go because he was overseas on a ship doing a residency, like a residency at sea. Okay. And thought he had missed it when he came.
I was about to say, and here is Alex Haley at the actual homecoming that they have.
Yeah. So I link every book that we talk about, even if it's not the particular ones that you pick for books on the bed, because I want people to find these, and these connect to you. And so people can read your work and read this, and it all feels part of a really big history.
These are, I mean, really beautiful and precise connections. I'm telling you, Matt, like this is amazing.
Well, you deserve the thought.
Oh, thank you.
Your books have meant a lot to me.
This was, I mean...
It's been a joy to read your work over the last few months. And like I said, that all started, I just was like, you know what? Register for this little Zoom.
Come on!
And I was there because of Jocelyn, you know, because eventually I'll interview her. And I loved reading her. Yeah. And I wanted to meet her. And so I'm glad eventually I get to. But that's why you just do things that interest you. Yeah. Because you never know who's waiting.
That's right.
To blow your mind.
Yes.
So I'm glad you like this.
Oh, I love them so much. You're going to get a very serious thank you card.
Well, now with the backstories all done, we can get to the books on the bed.
Oh, yeah.
So,
that's why we're here.
Which I love about this because I think it's important that people don't just have like here's one book, here's the next, right? Because these come from you.
True.
So we need to understand you, your context, your writing, and now we get to talk about which books you'd put on my bed.
How exciting. Listen, this is such a great exercise, too. We talked about this a little bit beforehand, but I mean, just thinking about if you had, you know, a dear friend coming to be with you, like what would you grab that might tell them something about you or about the region or that you just want to push into their hands because, you know, they're voracious readers. And so I was like, you know, I have my 6 books. They are not in any order.
That's okay.
So I was like, should I lay them out for Matt? Because how would I actually leave these books on Matt's bed if he was coming as a guest? And so I was like, I don't even know if there's an order that we want to talk about them. But I also realized that we're touching, you know, the 3 major genres here. Oh, and we have a play in there. I mean, we're really, you know, this really is very much like the stuff I dig. So you tell me where we should start. I have Matt, the spines facing Matt right now.
Okay. Oh, I have 2 thoughts.
Okay.
In soul culture, you mentioned that almost all of them, if not all of those poets you interviewed, talk about James and Tony.
That's right.
So we could start with those, and then I think after that, we go to Lucille.
Listen.
Because of your clear affection
That's right.
for Lucille Clifton.
That's right.
So, let's start with James and Tony because it seems like they just cross all genres. It does not matter. They have influenced everybody.
They do. You know, they really are. You know, they are the godfather and godmother of, like, you know, the American literary tradition, but particularly the Black American literary tradition. And so Baldwin he's going to show up in any stack I pick for anyone. Also because Baldwin is really readable. Like, we forget that, right? But I went back and forth. I was holding in my hands Go Tell It on the Mountain, and I landed on If Beale Street Could Talk. So that's the first book that we're talking about that I pulled for you for Books on the Bed. Because if a friend was coming to my house, for me, I feel like Go Tell It on the Mountain is the book that changed me the most. And I think I'm, you know, maybe that goes back to like faith and all the things that I'm thinking about. Also, I love a good Bill Douglas Roman, a good coming of age. You know, I love it. But I feel like If Beale Street Could Talk, because it's had this resurgence, because there's been a film, and also I'm just thinking about love stories right now. I told you I'm writing a novel, so my novel in my mind started out as a YA romance. I think now it's more women's fiction, but it started out that way. I just wanted to write a love story because I was really heartened by them during the pandemic. We were just talking about Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, which I think is kind of a love story in a love story in a love story, right?
Yeah.
And so those things were coming back to me. And I just think If Beale Street Could Talk is one of the most concise, prescient love stories that I've ever read. So I would give it to anyone. And I think you could finish it in a night. It would be like, you couldn't sleep last night? You could read, you know, at least half of Beale Street if you couldn't finish the thing if you're a guest in somebody's house.
Yeah, you definitely could.
Yeah. So all of these books are kind of slim, too. I was like, okay, my guests, I want to make sure they can read them.
You know, it's funny. It kind of connects to working at the bookstore near. A lot of people come through my town for the Appalachian Trail.
Oh,
it's the through hiking. Mm-hmm. And if they come in, they want something light to carry with them on the hike.
Right. Yeah, you can't take a big, heavy book. That's true.
And in some ways, I frame this as, like, essentially, these are books that I'll carry with me on my journey through life. So it's funny that they're lighter.
Yeah.
But If Beale Street Could Talk, you're right. This is it has had a resurgence. In fact, my designer for Story Made.
That's definitely one of my journey books.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because there's underlines, there's notes. It's well loved. It's like my copy because I'm going back to something similar right now.
I like this energy around the love story for you.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Clinisha Sibley, who loves August Wilson, playwright down in Macomb, Mississippi.
Okay.
She said a quote that stuck with me in our Story Made podcast interview that was, "I'm tired of success stories. I want to write love stories."
Oh my God. Ooh, and you don't think about those as being kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but Lord knows sometimes they are.
Because she had chased her dream of, she went to College of Charleston and got tenured, I think, professorship.
Yeah.
She was on kind of this, I'm going to be a big playwright. And it was out there that she realized that her love was back in Macomb, where she grew up. And she moved back. She works in the school system in the same place she grew up.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why she's just kind of like, you know what? It's not about being big or famous anymore.
Right.
It's about a love story.
That's
And so,
I feel
when
like
you bring this in.
the more and more I write and read, the more I agree with her. Yeah. Yeah.
For people that don't know about
Yeah.
your relationship to James Baldwin, why do you love him so much? Or when was the first instance you remember reading James?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I don't know if anybody has ever asked me that. And I'm happy to say it was in college. Same thing that we keep talking about. These teachers really make a difference in our lives. First of all, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So just Black contemporary writers, I just didn't even know they were a thing. And I'm not making it up. I was super well read as a kid. Like I had all these things, but I had no idea. Now, Baldwin, of course, at a certain point, was writing things that you might think are a little older than what you think of as contemporary, but Baldwin is the precursor for kind of every contemporary writer that you can think of. And in undergrad, I was given Sonny's Blues, a Baldwin short. If you listen, do yourself a favor. If you only read one short story this year, let it be Sonny's Blues. Because I remember reading that story and feeling like I could hear the piano. I was in the club with the smoke. I could see these two brothers who were learning themselves and learning what forgiveness meant and what love meant. And Baldwin is writing prose that sounds like poetry. Right?
Maybe that's why y'all are so
That's right. That's right. And then by the time you get to his essays, by the time somebody hands you, the Fire Next Time or any, the next thing that usually comes from Baldwin, you're like, oh my God, this reads like fiction. Like he is such a brilliant thinker, of course, but talk about a crafter of words. My God. There's just no one that is as good at what we're all trying to do as writers than James Baldwin. And it's a love story that's so clear. The dialogue is very clear. It sounds like people I know. It's two Black teenagers in love.
Yeah.
And it sounds like people I know. The situation is one that we're still dealing with quite a bit. And if Bill Street could talk, it also has one of these scenes that I think we don't talk about enough, where this boy who's in love is stepping into his manhood and has to talk to this young woman's father. And they have this like ongoing exchange. It's like, look, I am going to do all I can to care for them. And you can see him really stepping into who he is trying to become. And that kind of character development, we just don't get to see it. That kind of conflict and love and appreciation. And the father understands that he's loved this girl for a long time. It's just a very honest, like, what do you do when the kid next door who loves your daughter, comes to you and says, look, the baby's pregnant and this is what I'm going to do everything I can. I mean, we've all had this happen in our lives, in our families, in our, you know what I mean? And so it was just a very realistic love story, but also just more beautiful than anyone can bear. That's Baldwin.
Man, that's so true. Yeah. It's like when things hurt so much.
Yes.
But it's in the best way, Oh, man. Yeah, and I ask why sometimes, I don't always ask when people first encountered, but, reading Giovanni's Room in college as the first Baldwin book, it, again, just jolted me in a way that I hadn't read anything like that.
Yes, Of course
and
not.
so I'm just like, wow, this guy's pretty good.
That right? It's not bad.
This is a great book, but also, don't just watch the flick. It's a good flick.
Which
it's
is
a really
I was
good
about
flick.
to say, which I'm very happy that people are coming back to these stories that are brilliant stories and beautifully made. Now that we're doing such wonderful work. But really, the book is, everybody says this anyway, the book's always going to be better than a movie because you get more out of the book than you do out of the movie, just, girth-wise. But just, you don't want to miss some of these lines. I mean, Baldwin really, the way he writes love, it's tremendous.
I'm sure. Yeah, look at all this. You underlined the heck out of this thing.
Right. I'm really working in my life right now. I had a stack here. You can see there's different stacks on my shelves. And there was a stack of just, romances or books that I thought were real love stories for the last year or so, because the novel that I'm working on really resides in love. So
I can't wait for this novel. Just knowing the end, just how much there is behind that.
Thank you.
Yeah, time could not be bought. The only coin time accepted was life.
Come on.
Master.
This is right. A master.
I'm so glad you chose that one. And these old books, I love when people
do the vintage. Yeah.
Bring out that good stuff. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. Well, let's talk about Toni.
Okay.
Because they're connected in this way.
Of course they're connected. Not only are Toni Morrison and James Baldwin connected because they were dear friends, right? And contemporaries of each other, but really, Baldwin and Morrison, I don't know two Black writers that you'll hear about more as kind of the precursors to our work. And so, Toni Morrison, that's all, there's something else that I'm, hopefully working on in the future, some work about Morrison. But this book that I chose is a book that I don't think people talk about enough. So this is Toni Morrison's novel, Home. And so the reason, first of all, I love this book. I go back to Song of Solomon a lot because Song of Solomon is kind of my tippy top, I think, for Morrison, as it is for many people. And Sula, I also go back to Tar Baby a lot because, I'm reading love stories. But Home is a book that does not get enough attention for me. It's one of her few male protagonists that gets a voice all the way through. There's also this really beautiful story about a brother and sister who are caring for each other. There's a sibling love story that, kind of filters its way all the way through. And there is a turn, I don't know how recently you have read it, but there is a turn, at the end, near the end, that breaks your heart in the worst and best way and in the most human way. And so, you kind of built up one of the characters in your mind and in your heart, and you realize, oh crap, they're human too. And it's just, I hate when that happens. But then now we have to deal with, the face of our humanity and what that means for all of us looking in the mirror. And I don't think anybody does that like Morrison. And also, people complain about, Morrison's complexity. I don't know if they're complaining about it, but it comes up a lot, Morrison's complexity. I feel like this is a very, one of her clearer texts, right? The narrative is clear. It's really straightforward. You can read it. There's not all of the, kind of wild narrative that you get in jazz and people are confused about who's talking where and how. It's not like that. It's a straight up and down story.
We just talked about this with James.
Yes.
Which again, I like.
Yeah,
I
me
like
too.
the complexity. I don't think it
dampens anything, but I think if I were handing Morrison to a guest in my house, Home might be the one that I would put, instead of saying, well, read The Bluest Eye or read the, my family has already argued me down about that one.
You might be the only person that chooses this.
Home,
truly.
Right.
I don't think
people talk about it enough.
I don't think I've actually had a in-person conversation with anyone about that book.
That's right. And it's a little more contemporary. I mean, we're talking about issues that are a little more contemporary than you'll find in some of the other books. I really think Home is accessible and we don't talk about it enough. And again, little teeny tiny, could read this thing, right? You could read this thing in a few settings. Look at that, 145. Yeah. I mean,
truly.
You know,
You could,
I think it's a great one. If you're gonna jump into the Morrison foray and you're nervous about it, start with Home.
I like that.
Yeah.
A starter book.
Yeah.
I think and I don't know about you, you're a teacher, but this idea, I think of the sort of long syllabus I'm creating here.
Oh, yeah.
That English class, I'm telling you, it stays with me because I think this is that same opportunity. What difference can a story make?
Yes.
What would you share that could do something for someone, for us?
Yeah.
These moments where someone brings something that other people wouldn't put on the bed.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
Because, yes, plenty of people have read Toni Morrison.
But would I give Beloved to somebody just walking into the house and gonna stay for a week? I probably wouldn't. We need time.
What if you don't think what if you don't think they've read her before?
Right. If you haven't read Morrison, I wouldn't have anyone start with Beloved. Like, we gotta work our way up.
Well, you have to have you got to put yourself in the shoes of the reader.
That's right.
And you got to kind of understand them a little bit.
Yeah.
Think, okay, what would make sense in this context?
That's right.
I love that. I'm glad you thought about it that way. I don't know that anybody had.
I was like, listen, if somebody walks into and they need to know me, like they need to know who are your favorite writers in the world and how might I, follow the paths of those writers? How might I enter, the road that they're taking? These are kind of the entry books.
Well, I know we've alluded to it, but I think it's really important to talk about them together because of your book Soul Culture and how they're there throughout those interviews with Black poets in the best way you can. I know you could go on for hours about this.
Right.
Why are James and Toni so influential to all kinds of Black writers and all ages? She came up with Tyreek White. I mean, his debut novel was incredible. And Toni Morrison is all up in that.
Right.
So what is it about these two that break those barriers of genre and age?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like, really, there is really just no way to quantify that they're just good. Like, they're good writers, right? You understand? Like, their work is compelling. The way they put together sentences is really interesting. So that's there. But there are other huge things. Baldwin has his hand in, you're right, like I sat back like I was about to give a dissertation. I'm not, I swear. We're going to do this concisely, Matt. But Baldwin had his hand in popular culture. He's writing in every genre. I mean, Baldwin has books of poems, Jimmy's Blues. Baldwin has plays, right? Baldwin is making his way through culture in a way that, and then his essays, of course, become, kind of the narrative that captures Black living over decades. And does it really well. There's this beautiful essay that nobody talks about enough, and I can't remember the name of the essay right now, that Baldwin writes when, at the end, nearing what we think of as the legal end of segregation. It's an essay that he's writing in the 60s, and he says, no one is, this is definitely a paraphrase. It's much prettier than this. But, no one is arguing about, the death of segregation. We're arguing about how long and laborious the funeral will be. Come on, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, he's writing this in the 60s and making it so clear. Like, this is what we're doing to each other, right? So Baldwin's lens and his ability to capture world events and social and cultural movements in a way that everyone can understand them and can't deny when we're, being oppressed, and we is a large term there. I think that's important. Not to mention that he's a marginalized writer in every way. This is a Black gay man who's writing in segregated America, right? So he makes his way to Europe, like, get the heck out of Dodge. I gotta find a way to continue to write about these folks, but look at, so there's all that going on with Baldwin. And more than any of that, he just good. And really, that's what it is. And Toni, of course, her sensibility as a writer is crafted over decades. She doesn't even publish her first book until 39. She's 40, right? When Bluest Eye comes out, and it's still not, it doesn't come out to much acclaim. It's years later that people discover, her brilliance, and it gets picked up by City College. It's kind of like a read. I believe it's City College. It's kind of like a read-all for the city. And then people start reading the book and are like, who is this? But she lives her life as an editor for a decade before. So she's got her hands in, just any books that you can think of that are happening in the 60s and 70s. These writers, there's a really wonderful book, The Sisterhood, that just came out from Courtney Thorson, about this group of Black women writers, how a network of Black women writers changed American culture. It's a really brilliant book that just came out about these writers who met in New York for a year and said, not only are we thinking about brilliant ways to do our own work, let's make significant cultural change while we're doing it. We are kind of on the front lines of things, right? And so, Toni is not just thinking about, the best way to put words together. She's thinking about the way that literature can shift consciousness over time. So, of course, when she meets Baldwin, they gonna be, that's her ace, right? In addition to, plenty of other folks, she Toni K. Bambara, she's a deep supporter of Toni K. Bambara, who, I think is one of the best, talk about short stories, read Gorilla My Love, read the entire, read that book of short stories in its entirety. I told you to read Baldwin, Sonny's Blues, but read Toni K. Bambara. She is doing, she's living with Angela Davis for a year to get her, to get her biography out. She's Muhammad Ali's biography. She's the person who edits Lucille Clifton, and we'll get to Miss Lucille next, right? So Toni has her hand and on the pulse of the work and is editing that work. So she's the one who tells the brilliant people how to be more brilliant. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's why these two become the kind of the pinnacle for us. And not to mention that she just has her own gifts that then she's able to tap into and wield. Not that she doesn't have her own brilliant editor. Well, there's a wonderful look at Robert Gottlieb that just came out in a great documentary. But, she has done so much work of the slicing and dicing work to make other work more palatable, that now her work is just beyond.
Well, thank goodness she didn't just stay doing it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I wonder behind the scenes, are there people that they need to put themselves in the arena? Same thing in music. Yeah. I think there's a lot of producers who are good musicians. Like it's funny, people discovering, like young kids discovering that The Alchemist, the producer, rapped too.
Okay.
He's a white guy from the suburbs, but he's worked with if this dude's, look at who he's worked with. Yeah. Of course he can rap.
Right.
He's been around Dre and Nas and everybody else in hip hop.
That's right.
Oh man, I'm glad you brought both those out. I knew they were going to be in here in some way.
I'm glad. They're always, these folks will always come across also, any given day.
How great that you pulled this off the shelf, because it relates to soul culture and everything.
Right.
Like this network of...
It's all those things. And I don't know Thorson. I don't know these writers. I just know people that have been inspiring me lately. And I'm so excited to see, folks doing these projects that are steeped in research, but that also give us some real context for what was happening behind the scenes.
Oh, this is so great. I'm going to take a picture of this before I go.
Yep. No, you are not. That's going to be a gift. Matt, please.
Okay, fine. I will take it. Thank you. Yes. This makes a lot of sense.
We did it.
This makes sense. I got to bring that with me.
There's one. Yes.
Okay. So we got James, we got Toni. And now we got to go nowhere else but to
the mother of all mothers.
Mm-hmm. Tell him.
Lucille Clifton. Right? And so if you know anything about me, no matter what, if you ask me, who's your favorite writer? What's your favorite book? But Lucille is going to come up in the conversation because she really is a poet that I think has shaped my sensibility more than any other. She was a mentor and a dear love of mine. Her daughters are carrying that light now, all puns intended, because we're poets, right? And they're, a real gift in the world. They've just restored her house, the Clifton House, and their childhood home. They bought it, restored it, and have now turned it into a writing center, right?
I love
That's
that.
right. It's tremendous. And I was there and got to teach there for a while, and They were so gracious. They said, Mama's telling us to take you up to her room. So I got to go up and see, where Miss Lucille would write when they were children. And
is there anything better than
that?
No! To see the space, as a writer, come on.
Oh, my God. And it was, really, obviously, I'm a poet, y'all, so cut me some slack. But the way the light was coming in through the trees, I was like, Miss Lucille, I see you, Miss Lucille. So I picked for you the Book of Light. Now, I could have picked almost anything, right? Quilting, I think, is my first go-to. That's my ultimate favorite for myself. But if I were going to give Miss Lucille to a guest in the house, then I think Book of Light would kind of be a lovely starting place. It starts with this long list. It's just a list poem that is all the definitions for light that you would see in the dictionary, which kind of steps you into her world in a really lovely way that she's kind of just taken from the thesaurus. But then she goes into kind of everything that you know from Miss Lucille. These really sparse, really short poems, no punctuation. Even the I isn't capitalized. She doesn't want to center the self. She wants to center everyone else, right? But she's writing through poems that are midrash, so they're biblical retellings. She's writing through poems about the move bombing in Philadelphia. She is writing poems that link Superman to current events. So she's doing even if you in the Marvel DC world, Miss Lucille is coming for you.
She's got you.
She coming for you, right? So, this woman, talk about this being just, I think this book is one of her most well-rounded and beautiful collections with really understandable, clear, joyful poems. I teach this book more than I teach any of her other books because I think students are able to grasp it very easily. In some ways, at least, by a third of the way in, they really understand her style and they can try to imitate it. And she's not so intimidating that they don't see that there's a way in for themselves as writers. And that's what really attracted me to Miss Lucille as well.
Are there any in here that you could read to give people a window into her style and why you love this so much?
Of course. Oh, shoot. Oh, my God. Look at this. Oh, there's so many. If you could see, you guys, this is my teaching copy. So there's so many notes
highlights,
here.
Yeah.
So many notes.
I love it.
Oh, I do like that poem. I'm looking at one other. I'm just trying to make sure that this other poem. I'm going to let you choose. Oh, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah. What do you got? You got to do the...
Right, for real.
Page, put your finger down.
Put your finger down. This is one that I've been using a lot with faculty lately. Because in my other life, I teach faculty how to integrate reading and writing into the classroom, faculty from all different disciplines. And so we've started doing this wonderful exercise thanks to another brilliant teacher friend of mine, Jennifer Kidd, who's in education here. And we were talking about how do we have someone put on a different lens and kind of enter a space. And, if they saw a poem, might they be able to interpret and think about different lenses? And this is one of the poems that we came up with. This is Lucille Clifton. Note, passed to Superman. Sweet Jesus, Superman. If I had seen you dressed in your blue suit, I would have known you. Maybe that choir boy Clark can stand around listening to stories, but not you. Not with Metropolis to save and every crook in town filthy with kryptonite. Lord, man of steel, I understand the cape, the leggings, the whole ball of wax. You can trust me. There is no planet stranger than the one I'm from.
Come on.
You know what I mean? Talk about, her kind of really... I love any poet that can address pop culture, right? Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorite things. But also what she's doing with this kind of what we know as this Superman myth and then turning it on its head like, oh, look, you think you're from the alien planet? Look at how these crazy fools act on Earth. Right? There is no planet stranger than the one I'm from. I understand you trying to be somebody else. I understand you trying to be empowered in a different way, right?
They call that a bar.
Yeah, that's what they call that.
Oh,
It's
that's
a
so,
bar.
and it's so great that you get to use your gift as a poet, as a teacher, to do that with faculty.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
what
exciting.
quality enhancement plans.
Yes, look at you, Matt.
I actually
You're
saw
the best researcher.
Look, I saw one that you did. What was it, 2021?
Yeah,
You know, 'cause
did you?
Here's the thing: working at a university, I know where the news goes.
That's right.
I know how to look at what's going on. I was like,
That's
you have a
right.
really interesting job.
Yeah.
So as we were talking before
Yeah.
all this started, you know, of like marrying those interests, and the love with the job,
That's right.
and feeling like you can have that impact. It's like to give Lucille to people to
Come on.
to help them in their work. Like, yeah, that's pretty powerful.
It's pretty big. And
it's new.
I mean, it doesn't happen often, but my goodness, when there are ways that I can infuse and marry the two and people trust me to do that and then kind of carry that with them, and it teaches them something larger, something wider, it's one of the greatest gifts. I really enjoy what I get to do with faculty right now.
That's really cool. There's something about Lucille Clifton that I want to address because, you know, a lot of these books, you never know who's going to find them.
Yeah.
It's so important that we have more diverse stories
Yep.
that people can get to.
Yeah.
And with Lucille, this goes back to your childhood in Arizona,
Yeah.
in Phoenix. This
Yeah.
goes back to being, how many black students did you say were in your class? Was it just you?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was
and-
like, who, me?
And remember didn't you win a poetry
Oh, yeah.
award?
I did win
that
a
whole
poetry
story
prize.
is
Yeah.
wild
Isn't
with your
that
teacher.
crazy with Miss Myers? Yeah. It's all true.
But that they
All true.
questioned
Yeah.
the validity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, was this?
Absolutely. Did you?
They didn't
write
know
that?
you were that good.
Right.
They didn't know yet.
Yeah.
But just thinking of your isolated feeling out there,
Yeah.
that can be really lonely.
Yeah.
And, you know, compared to where you live now.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
there's more community.
Yes.
But with Lucille, you had a quote where you said she changed everything about what I could, changed everything about what I thought I could write about women.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Because Miss Lucille, listen, I read a very tame poem, but Miss Lucille is writing about women's bodies. She has this, lovely poem about her sister who is a prostitute, and she's talking through, how, I stand up in your shadow. I mean, Miss Lucille is talking about, her abortions. She's talking about how her children eventually save her life with transfusions. I mean, she's saying things aloud that I just didn't know you were allowed to say. I had no idea. I was like, what, you can write? People can say this stuff. What your mama say when you wrote that? You know what I mean? Because my mama definitely said to me, "You gonna put them nasty poems in the book too?" When my first book came out, right, and started to understand, oh, this child is gonna say what she needs to say about
What's
any
funny
and
is because
everything.
you were known as a child that was already going to say speak your mind,
I was completely tactless.
and then Lucille
so-
just leveled you up.
Right.
You know,
Miss Lucille said, "Oh, everything is in play. There is nothing off limits." Right.
and how special to know.
Yeah.
And
It
and to
changes
have
everything.
felt
It
that.
blows your mind.
That's
it
really
blows
cool.
the doors wide open.
And I think it's something that a lot of us that have not been
Yeah.
the only person in
Yeah.
the classroom
Yeah.
from an identity. This happens a lot with Appalachian people.
Yes.
They go to college in a different place,
Mm-hmm.
and it can become very hard to see themselves in anything,
Yeah.
to make friends, to feel comfortable with the coursework, literature classes.
Yeah.
Oh, why are we reading this? I don't see anything that represents my life.
That's right.
And so that quote really stuck with me, particularly about writing about women, because it was so everything is on the table.
That's right. That's right.
And how freeing that can be.
Oh, and it was and still is.
It's so cool you got to
Absolutely.
know her. And
Yes.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, so we got through those.
We got through
What's the
3.
next one?
Okay, so we can do them in the order that they're here, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
And so I was looking for a memoir because I had already picked, these are not the order that I picked them off the shelves, but I think I grabbed the poems first. They always come first, right? And I was thinking, but I would, memoir has become important to me because it was something that I was steeped in while working on my own memoir, but it's always been important to me as a reader, like just hearing people's life stories. And Joan Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking, I just feel like it's a book that everyone should read at some point in their lives. Because this book, you've read Soul Culture, so you saw how, it kind of came to me and then came back to me. But if you don't know this book, it is a book where Joan is kind of reliving the year that her husband, also a brilliant writer, John Gregory Dunn, passes away. He has a heart attack in their home, I believe. I know it was in their home because I've read the book, but I can't remember if it's a heart attack or a different coronary event. And she kind of then has to walk through the next year figuring out how to do her life without this person who has kind of been her sounding board for everything for decades, right? And I just think the older I get and the more people I lose and the more anxious I get about the world with children and now a grandbaby. I got a grandbaby that's graduating kindergarten tomorrow. It's making me crazy. Oh my God, he's so freaking cute. It really, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stand it, Matt. I don't know if I'll be able to stand it tomorrow. But that also makes you, really, like, sometimes my anxiety is through the roof because you just worry about these people so much. And you think very little about then how you will have to become another person, outside of them again. Right? And I think Joan Didion is doing that work, but also she goes back to poems throughout the entire year. She is trying to help her and her daughter figure out, her daughter gets very sick during this time as well, and she's trying to figure out, how do I remember as much as I possibly can to hold on to this person, and then how do I make and remake myself in their wake?
You could do a whole podcast about that.
I know.
Like what, books that helped you remake yourself after losing people, losing a job, losing your land, whatever it might be, the sense that something rooted you, something was so a part of you, and now it's gone.
And now it's gone.
Who are you?
Yeah.
We struggle with that question.
So we struggle with it, and then there are this could really be a podcast or it could be a something. Somebody do this. But I'm thinking about that a lot. I told you I'm thinking about Morrison, for different reasons. And she's one of the writers who had a house burned down with her manuscripts in it, like at the height of her career. And what that must be like to lose such a huge part of yourself and all of your memories and all of your, while you're kind of at the height of this thing. And so all these things that are supposed to mean so much to you, I'm sure become minuscule compared to, this stuff that you've lost. So, photographs become just kind of the most precious thing she has in this moment, right? So there's so many things. This book, of course, is about losing a dear love. And love stories have become, my calling. That's right. They've become, the thing that calls to me this year. But, thinking about how we make our way through major loss. I think, there's so many ways for us to examine it and so much we can learn from each other.
And sometimes it's much easier to read something than it is to have people give you advice about how to do it.
Yes.
I can tell you what, the older I get, the less advice I solicit from people because I'm just it's so personal.
Yeah.
Loss of any kind is so personal. It doesn't mean people can't support you or that they're not good at it. But we need these types of texts to say, if I'm going to remake myself, that's a big deal.
That's right.
So a lot of it's going to happen just with you. And you need a guide.
Absolutely. It's slow and it's internal so much more than it's external.
And it's so important.
That's right.
Because it is a huge opportunity, in fact. As hard as it is to look at it that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they say that I've reframed a mental breakdown. Because when I was at my worst, hearing that that's actually such a gift to, it's hard to get any lower than you are. You literally are, it is your body telling you wake up. You have to change.
You have to stop.
Or else this is going to keep going. You can't afford to wait.
Yeah.
So then what do you do about that?
That's right.
Well, you can go anywhere with it. So use that in some way. And even though loss can weigh you down, it's good to have those people that help you guide you through it, because it's slow, it's deliberate. You'll go back as much as you go
it's not
forward.
linear.
So I'm glad you chose that.
Yeah, that's a book that I would push into anyone's hands, because I think you never know when you're going to need it. And also, as I get older and reread it, it changes every time I get to look into it, right? Because I've changed every time.
Oh, that's the best when you go back to things as you grow, and you're like, I wonder what this is going to hit like now.
Yeah. And just, again, hardcore, they're just good. Joan's just a really great writer.
It's true. They're good. And I think about something like that, and maybe you have, well, I'm sure you have plenty others that are like this, but that you do revisit because in some way they are, it's just a group of books that I have that are my life guides.
Oh, yeah.
That
Absolutely.
when I needed reminding of something, right? I go back to Willa Cather.
Yeah.
I go back to Eudora Welty.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to have those books because you are going to experience loss.
Right.
And remake yourself over and over again.
And even for me as a writer, it's just so interesting that you say that. Even for me as a writer, the list of books that I go back to even expands like well into the past, because I try to go back and reread books that changed my life as a child too. Walter Dean Myers, I go back to Walter Dean Myers so much. Fast Sam Cool Clad and stuff. If y'all reading Walter Dean Myers, and his son of course became a brilliant illustrator, but those books that changed my understanding of the world when I was 10. Listen, Mildred D. Taylor, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, even more than that. Those books were as formative as something like The Year of Magical Thinking. That's,
maybe not enough of us go back to childhood books because we always think, that was a stage.
Yeah.
Right? You can still get something from that. I think it's really important to revisit. But there's something I actually wrote down. You mentioned her at one point. I don't remember. Maybe it was in your conversation with Ethelbert. Maybe it wasn't.
Okay.
Eloise Greenfield.
Is it Eloise? Yes. Oh my God. It was definitely in my What did you write down?
I was just like, because I remember you talked about the cover.
Honey, I Love is a book that, it was the first book of poems I ever read. I'm sure of that.
Wow.
It was the first book of poems I read because I didn't even know contemporary poets were writing. But my teacher gave us Langston Hughes' Mother to Son. I was a library kid. The library is still one of my favorite places. When I go in now to my local library here, Mary Pretlow, it's like cheers. They're like, hey, Remica, because I'm in there so often. You know what I mean? So, but I went to then a Glendale library and said, I'm looking for Black poetry? Like, I remember asking, I was probably in the 5th grade.
Do you have that?
Right. Is that a thing? And they were like, oh, that's fine. They were like, there's a book. And so they pulled Eloise Greenfield, Honey, I Love, off the shelf. Beautiful chocolate black girl with the big afro on the cover, or her little afro puffs. It looked like my hair. I was like, what is this? I've never seen this anywhere. And then everything about what happened in that book changed my understanding of, you can write like this, like about things that you know and people you love, and you can write about going to the corner candy lady at your, and who's in your neighborhood, and your grandmama give you, 25 cents to get you a freezy cup, and she was writing things that I knew, and that, it opened up a world to me.
And not only that you can write it, you ought to. You must.
You ought to.
Because again, I think about your writing. Every time I'm with a writer and I think of the line of, Eloise Greenfield, all these people that influenced you, you're going to be that for somebody.
Oh.
You are. And someone's going to recognize things they know in your words and your stories. So that's just such a cool, powerful thing to carry on. Is that feeling of someone knowing them, recognizing themselves, their life, their stories, and that they might then write too. Because, hey, if Remica can do it.
It has to be how it happens, right? You don't think about it in that way, but yes, of course.
Because it can be hard to write and wonder, what does this all mean, But the more people that write what they know,
that's right.
the more people can find it in those libraries. I also find the library story that where that you talk about in Soul Culture,
where I get a book band.
You have a book
so
band. That is wild.
It's up here probably
it's
3
here.
times. Oh, there it is. You see it right there?
Yep.
Yeah, there's probably 3 of them because I buy them so much now because I'm crazy. So, Soul Culture, if you haven't read the memoir, I knew so little about Black poetry, and in my middle school, we actually had a wonderful library and a wonderful librarian. But I was searching for Black poets again, or Black poetry on our new computer card catalog. I remember it was very exciting for all of us. And the book that came up is a book called The Black Poets, which is a famous anthology from Dudley Randall. I didn't know anything about anthologies. I didn't know anything about there being lots of Black poets writing. So I don't even know if I was sure what I was reading. But I opened it and it starts with like folk poems, right? And there is a poem, and I think of this word as an expletive, so excuse it when I use it, but "Run Nigga Run" is the poem that starts it. And I looked at the poem, was immediately horrified, and said, "What is this? Why do they have it in my library?" And closed the book and went to the librarian, who was just the sweetest, kindest woman. Like, she really knew me as how many dorky middle school readers are there, right? It's true. Yeah. So there was only a few kids that was in there every day. And I was like, this book, it says bad words, and it makes us feel bad about ourselves. And she's like in a huff, like, okay, we'll take care of it, darling. Don't worry. And she meant it in all the best ways. Like, and then the book was gone. And then when I walked into my very first, I'll never forget, African American Studies class in college, after I became, big shot, I'm on scholarship, I'm studying English and African American Studies. And the first book on the essential reading list is The Black Poets by Dudley Randall. And I was like, oh no, maybe I made a mistake those years ago. And then you realize, oh my God, look at all these poets that are there. If you look at the rundown now, you'll be like, oh, Remica, what could you possibly thought? But I just, and I had to forgive myself for that. I had to forgive myself for being, a naive child and thinking I was doing the right thing. But also in this era of like book bannings and people just being rash, I wonder what it might have been like had there been any conversation, had anyone thought, let's talk this child down. And I still think the librarian was just trying to care for me as my human, serious reader self. But I wonder if that might have been something that, we would have gone about very differently. But now I'm so guilty in all my life that I buy the book every time I see it on the shelf, and I give it to people, and I leave it in.
That's what I love
leave
about
it in
how
thrift
that
stores.
story,
I give it to students. I send it to prisons. I do everything, and I keep a copy on the shelf to remind myself you're not always right about everything. You need to get yourself together. Yep, that's it.
I love that story. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, if you're writing a memoir, you got to tell other people's stuff, but you got to tell all your worst stuff too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's just not fair. And you're lying.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Nobody likes a liar.
That's right.
We want to know all this stuff.
That's right.
That's why memoirs are great.
That's right.
The honest ones.
Listen.
Shield me from nothing.
I am so nosy. I want to know everything. So I think it's only fair that you, put some of your worst days and your best days out there, because I want to know that too.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's get to the last two we got here.
Last two. August Wilson, Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I'm a huge August Wilson fan. This is a play. Everybody reads The Piano Lesson. Fences has, had its resurgence in many ways. And listen, August Wilson, the work that he manages to get done, that century cycle that he manages to do, it's just, I just don't know a body of work that holds up as well as that century cycle kind of in American theater, period. But also just the girth of it. Now, I'm not saying everything is perfect, but Joe Turner's Come and Gone is one of the perfect plays in that cycle. There's The Shining Man. It reminds you that there is light and spirit that you can capture, that no matter, who you are and how you've been torn down. And I just think it's a book that I come back to for the language and the love as much as I come back to anything else in my life. So I tell people if you're going to read August Wilson, read Joe Turner's Come and Gone.
Another one that I would wonder who else would pick it, like, because I've talked about August Wilson with other people, but I'm glad you got that one.
A brilliant August Wilson biography just came out in 2023, a book that is not getting enough attention. It's so well done.
Let's get some more.
I was about to say, I don't have it or I would pull it for you. That would be your second book. But the biographer who, knew Wilson and talks extensively says Joe Turner's Come and Gone is his best play as well. So I felt very vindicated. Yes.
That's all you need to know.
The theater critics say it, but just true. Culturally, I just think it's a magnificent piece. It holds up really well.
Oh, I love
and
that.
Reads well on the page. Seeing it, of course, is another experience, but reads well on the page.
It's another interesting thread of like all the poets I talk to, how frequently August Wilson is it.
Well, he starts out as a poet. Let's be clear. August, believes he is a poet, and we were talking about, things that are not good hustles, and realizes, maybe 5-10 years in, like, I got to do something else because I am not surviving. He also realizes that he's overwriting, a lot as a poet, but it lends itself to dialogue, of course.
It's a good transition,
Right. I was about to say, and if you can really carry a narrative, well, then there's a place for you, right? But he starts out believing that he's a poet and always put poets as kind of like the pinnacle of the writing tree.
I think, that trajectory in a career is really important because of how frequently, whether it's writers or musicians, really anybody, it doesn't matter your career, the idea of doing something else that actually you might be better suited for can be scary because I always used to talk about this with my students, and I use basketball because I was in Minnesota at the time, but business school students really suck at this.
Okay.
Because, I use language that they can understand. Sunk cost. The sunk cost fallacy ruins more chances for someone to really thrive at something, especially in art. I spent so much time investing in myself as a poet or a novelist or whatever, that if I can't go do something else.
Right.
Because then what about all that?
I did all that.
But here's the thing. Here's the fallacy in that. Okay, I used to use this, but Andrew Wiggins, they drafted him in Minnesota Timberwolves #1, and he just wasn't good.
No.
So instead of just giving him an automatic massive extension for $200 million, you should cut him.
Yeah, because
he's not worth it just because you wish he would have been.
Yeah.
Right? But in this case, it's, you might just need to make a slight alteration, just go a different way. And that's really important for young people who want to write or do something to know that you can change.
See what else is out there.
And in fact,
and make it something adjacent.
You can still love something.
That's right.
You can still make your words poetic. But you might not need to be a poet.
And that's what he does. Wilson does that. Read that biography if you're struggling with trying to figure out your space. It's really something to watch his evolution and him figuring out who he is in the world of writing.
I love that.
Yeah. Last one.
Let's get at it.
Last one. Listen, we're in Norfolk, Virginia. So I have chosen Tim Siebel's Fast Animal, which is, Tim Siebel's was my first poetry teacher.
Wow.
I followed him here to Old Dominion. I'm an alum. I went here for undergrad. I'm now teaching here. I direct a quality enhancement plan, as Matt said, and teaching English and women's studies. But 20 years ago, I found Tim Siebel's book on a thrift store shelf and thought the heavens were opening up to me, like the gods had sent me the book. And then, maybe 10 years down the line after we've been working together, he was like, Meek, I put those books in the thrift stores all the time. They right up the street from my house.
Oh, my God.
I swear. And I was like, can you let me believe that you were sent to me? I just saw him the other day and we still mess with each other a lot. But this book in particular, Fast Animal, is a book that I would give to a guest who was visiting. I feel like maybe Hurdy-Gurdy is probably my favorite Tim Siebel's book. But Fast Animal is a book that was nominated for the National Book Award, so people have probably read it. But it's filled with all of these, in addition to those Blade poems. So, if you're a comic book fan, he's got all these poems in the voice of Blade, right? But in addition to that, he's got all of these poems that are these memory poems for dear friends when he was a teenager. So like poems that are just named after the person. So Terry Moore, Dolores Jeps, right? And he's just writing all of these poems. Like, if somebody deserves a poem in your life who kind of changed your life early on, I want to make sure I say the thing that I wanted to say to them. And I think it's so,
That's really
it's a
beautiful.
beautiful idea. He's also kind of at the height of his talent with this book, because he's writing the heck out of those poems, still, really into formal verse and doing villanelles and all kinds of things. But just, there's all these poems that are like, you're my friend and I want you to have this word.
Oh my gosh. See, that wrecks me because we save too often, or we withhold what we feel about people.
Yeah.
And especially friends or family.
Yeah.
I think you should always tell people that you love them.
Yes.
I think if you admire somebody, you should tell them you admire their work and who they are and their character, because that type of praise and love being put out into the world is only going to carry it forward in a positive way. And
That's right.
And you only get good stuff from that.
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes, you need to be reminded. I need to be reminded to tell my friends
I was about to say, and
how I feel about how much they mean to me. And so, that idea is really, really good.
Isn't it good? And we mourn so much when we don't get to do it, right?
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Really, like the loss of that. So I teach a love poem. I swear we didn't plan this, but I teach a love poems class for a writing center in the area called The Muse. And the last thing I have them do is I have them write a poem. If the world is ending in 10 minutes, now write the love poem to the person that you need to write it to, that you haven't touched all semester. So we got 10 minutes as our very last exercise. And they made me do the exercise the last time I did it. So that ended up being the last poem that I wrote for Starlight and Error. But what comes out of that is I've never written my stepmother a poem, and I should have. Oh my God, I've never written my childhood best friend a poem, and they've been here forever. I've never written my teacher a poem that changed everything for me. And that kind of thing, like, you can't, there's just no joy, no greater joy than seeing those poems go out into the world. Because then I task them with, if you're brave, give the poem to the person.
Yeah.
And they never fail to write me back and say, God, I gave my mom that poem. One student said, I gave my mom that poem you made me write her, and she wrote me a poem.
Oh my gosh. Stop.
I was wrecked for the rest of the day. I just cried all over campus because who imagines that's going to happen? Yeah.
Again, you put things out into the world, you never know what's going to come from that. Yeah. And I think, gosh, you just reminded me, I'm always pretty good about, like, even Story Made started with handwritten letters to people that helped me live honestly. Yeah. They didn't know me, but it was something that I don't feel like you should hold back, even with you. Like, everybody I come across needs to know how I feel about them.
And you're just so excited when it happens, right? Yeah. Because we put as artists, we put our work out into the ether, and then you just pray that it lands somewhere. But really, we don't control any of that. Yeah. It goes into the ether and it's gone often. So when someone says, something you did spoke to me, it makes us feel like, oh, all those years of work, just a little bit of that. If I can get any of that back, it's the best gift that I'm given.